I've spent over 3 decades being a scientist in my own right, like running independent case study after independent case study and finding out what works in the human condition and helping people really be powerful, really using that power for good, for themselves and for the world. And I work with concepts. I mean, that's probably the most important factor is that everything that I work with, everything, are concepts. That's it. They're nothing more than concepts. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of not trying to tout these concepts as truths. I'm just so tired of skeptics and people who are just, oh, you can't do that, or that's not true. And, all these people that are just so friggin' arrogant, it's ridiculous. It's like, oh, you own the totality of truth. Okay, good luck with that. And so, these are just concepts. And I'm not just saying that to whatever you want to call it, to parade truths as concepts. They're not. These are all just concepts. And I work with archetypes, and that's just concepts. And what's an archetype, Dr. Michael? It's just a placeholder for energy. That's all it is. It's just a model, if you will. And all of these concepts have like one very, very important like similarity. And that is that you can play with them. You can interact with them. You can explore them. You can have a relationship with them. And at that point, fascinatingly, only if you play with them, do they then stop being quote unquote just concepts. At that point, they also become incredible sources of support. And that is something that we don't really appreciate, that it doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be true. It's just like creating a purpose or a meaning or a reason for being. All of those ideas don't have to be true. They just have to work for you. Work for you meaning that they have utility, they have value, they're practical, they give you a greater quality of life. And honestly, I really believe that is the whole thing with God. People can't stand the word God, and my whole thing is, well, how is that working for you? I mean, then if there's no God, then you have to replace God, or something has to replace God. Well, it's nature. It's like, well, that's God. Well, I know I can't do that because, I'm intelligent, and intelligent people have been drinking the Kool-Aid for decades regarding how incredibly silly that is to believe in a supreme being. And they've done an incredible job of helping us ridicule God, the existence of God. And that's just absolutely insane. And I promise you, if I turn around to any atheist and agnostic and I say, what's your definition of success? Or what's your definition of love? You can get a lot of different answers. And then you realize it's really personal. I mean, you can have any definition for God that you want. My suspicion is that if you're saying there's no such thing as God, you're drinking the Kool-Aid regarding some definition of God that's faulty or incomplete or inaccurate, and you're just unwilling to have a personal definition of the word God because you just want to continue to be agnostic or atheist because you actually are drinking the Kool-Aid that's intelligent, that there's some wisdom in that. And there isn't any wisdom in that. There just isn't. There's just resistance. And this is not the good resistance. It's not like the helper T cell resistance, where the helper T cells can see something and they get to work to answer the call. That's it. You get to work to answer the call, and you're behaving and you're acting in very, very, very productive ways, in ways that support your own growth, in ways that support and elevate humanity and make things better. And honestly, it's just so difficult to do that as yourself, by yourself. If there's no God, then you have to play that role somehow or learn how to exist without it. And what if there really is no God? Well, even if that were the case, that's just a friggin' stupid concept. It just is. I mean, because now you don't have anything higher, a higher power. You can't look at anything greater than yourself because there isn't anything greater than yourself. And if there's nothing greater than yourself, what's the point of even living if you're not here to evolve, to bring humanity up, to help humanity evolve, if you can't emerge, if there isn't a greater you out there, and there is, but if there isn't a greater you out in here, then what's the point? And where did that even come from? If it didn't come from God, where did that ability to go into your greaterness even come from? So once you recognize that, it's really wise to consider that there is a greaterness, there's a greater version of you, there's a greater intelligence than you, and that you could focus on that greaterness, and then you'll see things more clearly than the way you see them. And so that you can see with greater eyes. And it's not necessarily your eyes. There's always something that's bigger than you, whoever you are out there. And if you feel an incredible amount of resistance to call that God, and then you don't want to give God as some supreme source of wisdom, then you cut yourself off from having access to a supreme source of wisdom that's greater than you. And so that's just friggin' stupid. That's just like, you're not intelligent. You are absolutely insanely dumb and shooting yourself in the foot. There's no friggin' wisdom to saying there is no God. There isn't any wisdom to that. I'm sorry. You would suck at a debate club, and here's the bottom line. Whether God is or God isn't is completely irrelevant. What if God is just a concept? Thank you, John Lennon. It's allowed to be. And if you're a theist, and you're like, oh my God, that's blasphemy to say God is a concept. God doesn't mind. God doesn't care. If there is a God, God doesn't care what name you use to call God God. God doesn't even care if you say there's no such thing as God, to be honest. I mean, there's no point in really unpacking a debate where there is no answer. That's just silly. Whether there is or there isn't is irrelevant. You know what is relevant? Whether or not you're allowing for the possibility that there could be, or that you even allow God to function as a concept and extrapolate all the wisdom in adopting that concept, as opposed to shooting yourself in the foot and saying there isn't one because you know unequivocally, which is ridiculous. You don't know unequivocally. No one knows unequivocally whether there is or isn't a God. I'm sorry. Now you can do what I do and say, well, look at the world. It's beautiful. There are signs everywhere that there's a God. And now we're getting into, well, what is your definition of God? Well, God is everything. God is love. God is the glue that holds us together. God is consciousness. God is the wisdom. And it's like, these are all personal definitions. But when I look at atheists and agnostics have a definition of God, it's a ridiculously incomplete and inaccurate definition. And it's not even their definition. It's like they're drinking the Kool-Aid regarding a ridiculously incomplete or inaccurate definition of God. Like, oh, my definition, I went to the dictionary, look what the dictionary says. And so you're denying the dictionary's definition of God doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the God concept. Have your own personal definition of God, but have one. Don't adopt Webster or any dictionary. Really, that's just friggin' stupid. I'm sorry. You people who are walking around feeling, and by the way, this is not an accident. There's a push to push God or kill God or edge God out, ego, edging God out. And it's like, and if you don't see that, and if you don't see how programmable you are to become so friggin' triggered at the word God, and it's like, that was put there. That's not instinctive in you to deny God. And you're really not even denying God. What you're denying is your ability to have a definition of God that makes God real or work, or even if it's a concept that can be beneficial. And what happens here is if you're not willing to have your own personal, intimate definition of, and you can use higher power, you can use life's intelligence, you can use consciousness, all that is, nature, the oneness, the spirit, all of these things. Well, that's my God. Yeah, I like spirit. Well, spirit says, and it's like, okay, but again, you can use all the AKAs you want to use for God. You can define what is God. But then to say there is no such thing as God, well, now you're not defining God. You're using someone else's inaccurate or incomplete definition. God is, well, my God isn't, up on the, out in the world somewhere judging people and deciding who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. I was like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? And even if that was something you happened upon, why are you adopting that as a definition of God just because you heard it somewhere or other people believe that's a definition of God? You're going to let me define what is success? I mean, don't you get to decide? Isn't success based on values? Don't you think we have values choices? And it's like, or you're going to let someone else define what is success for you. Do you have to have X amount of dollars to be successful? I mean, like literally, you're drinking the Kool-Aid regarding, what the definition of God is. And it's such a ridiculously incomplete and inaccurate definition that it makes it like wise to deny it, to deny this definition of God. But why are you even adopting that definition of God? Oh, that's right. So I can be agnostic or atheist. Why? Oh, because, in the scientific community, that's seen as intelligent, and I really want to be seen as intelligent. Oh, God bless. Really, get on the program, play with the God concept, give yourself permission to see God as real. Use a working definition for you. Don't use a ridiculous definition that makes it organic for you to deny the existence of God. That is just foolish, because then you can have access to this incredible unifying intelligence that governs and moves everything in perfect timing, in perfect precision, the orchestration is unbelievable how everything is just working organically. There is some wisdom that's holding everything together and moving everything forward together at the right and perfect time, at the right perfect proportions, and that you don't have to use your will to get the proportions right. And so, unwilling to call that God is just absolutely insane, because what else are you resisting that would be supporting you? That would make your life much better and make your experience of the human condition much more blissful. Unless you really don't care about quality of life, if you're absolutely okay in coexisting with pain and living in pain, for instance. So so now he's equating pain with the absence of God. And it's like, oh, God bless. Deal with the natural consequence of your choices. You're dealing with them anyway. That's what phenomena is. Phenomena is, you can call it karma, anything. You're playing around with energy that you don't understand. You really are. There's phenomena everywhere, and it's not going to fit neatly into a scientific mechanism of understanding. And when you understand that we're dealing with things that are nonlinear, that are seemingly chaotic or seemingly unrelated, but that they're all connected in a very quantum entanglement kind of way. So you have to use that word. Isn't that crazy? We can go with quantum entanglement, and then all of a sudden the intellectuals are like, oh yeah, there's quantum entanglement. That's a thing. It's like, you don't realize how programmed all of this is? There is a oneness. Like it or not, we are all one. Oh, that's just a concept. Okay, it's just a concept. Fine. But adopt that concept, because it'll make you a better human being. It'll help you really find solutions where otherwise you wouldn't even know that they exist. Or why would you shoot yourself in the foot? Like, why would you want to enter a dark room looking for things when you could just turn the light on? For God's sake, turn the light on. Anyway, my name is Michael Sumecka. I'm a creative. Welcome to Candles and Coffee. I call it Candles and Coffee because I want to start out with a candle, like in a very Zen kind of mood. But it's the coffee that really keeps me going. Play with concepts. Play with these ideas. See what happens. Enjoy these interviews. And I'm out.